The sun beat down mercilessly on Riverside Park in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, turning the asphalt parking lot into a shimmering heat mirage. It was the kind of summer day where the air itself felt heavy, thick with humidity that made every breath feel like drinking warm water. Despite the oppressive heat, hundreds of families had gathered for the city's annual Police Community Day, an event designed to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community they served. Officer Sarah Martinez stood in the shade of a large oak tree, grateful for the small respite from the blazing sun. Beside her, sitting with military precision, was her K-9 partner, a German shepherd named Max. At first glance, Max looked like the perfect police dog. His black and tan coat gleamed in the dappled sunlight, his muscular frame spoke of strength and training, and his dark, intelligent eyes scanned the crowd with professional alertness. But Sarah knew better. She'd known better for 2 long, frustrating years. Max was broken. Oh, he performed his duties well enough during demonstrations like this one. He sat when commanded, shook paws with excited children, and posed for countless photos. But there was something missing, a spark, a connection, a will to truly engage with the world around him. Sarah had been his handler since the department assigned him to her following his previous partner's death. She'd read the file. K-9 Max retired from active duty due to behavioral changes following handler's death in the line of duty. The file had been frustratingly sparse on details. No mention of family, no personal history of the fallen officer, just cold, bureaucratic language that reduced a tragedy to a few typed sentences. Sarah had tried everything to reach Max, different training techniques, longer play sessions, even consulting with veterinary behaviorists. Nothing worked. Max existed, but he didn't truly live. "Officer, can my son pet your dog?" A mother's voice pulled Sarah from her thoughts. She smiled warmly, the expression coming easily despite her inner frustration. "Of course, Max loves kids," she said, though the words felt hollow. Max tolerated kids. He accepted their sticky hands and enthusiastic hugs with patient resignation, but Sarah had never seen joy in his eyes during these interactions. A small boy, maybe 5 years old, approached cautiously. His hand extended toward Max's head, trembling slightly with nervous excitement. Max sat perfectly still, allowing the child to pat his head with jerky, uncertain movements. "What's his name?" the boy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is Max," Sarah replied, crouching down to the child's level. "He's 7 years old and he's been a police dog for most of his life." "Does he chase bad guys?" The boy's eyes widened with excitement. Sarah felt her chest tighten. "He used to," she said carefully. "Now he helps me teach people about police work and safety." The truth was more complicated. Max had been one of the best K-9 officers in the state before his handler died. He'd had a record number of successful apprehensions, had found missing children, had literally saved lives. But after that night, the night his partner was killed, Max had simply shut down. He'd refused to track, refused to apprehend, refused to do anything but exist in a fog of what Sarah could only describe as grief. The boy's mother thanked her, and they moved on to examine the police motorcycles nearby. Sarah checked her watch. 11:47 a.m. Another hour and 13 minutes until she could take Max home to his quiet kennel, where he'd lie down and stare at nothing until tomorrow's shift. Around them, the park pulsed with activity. The fire department had brought their ladder truck, much to the delight of dozens of children who were taking turns sitting in the driver's seat. Police officers demonstrated forensic techniques at folding tables covered with fingerprint cards and magnifying glasses. The bomb squad's robot performed demonstrations, its mechanical arm picking up suspicious packages while children cheered. The smell of popcorn and hot dogs from vendor carts mixed with fresh-cut grass, creating a distinctly summer festival atmosphere. A group of teenagers approached next, asking about K-9 training. Sarah launched into her well-rehearsed explanation, describing how police dogs are selected, trained, and paired with handlers. She explained how the bond between dog and handler becomes unbreakable, how they learn to communicate without words, how they trust each other with their lives. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was describing a bond she'd never experienced with Max, talking about trust and communication that she'd been chasing for 2 years without success. "Can Max do any tricks?" one of the teens asked. Before Sarah could respond, Max's entire body language changed in an instant. His ears, which had been in a relaxed position, suddenly shot forward, standing at full attention. His head snapped to the left, his body tensing like a coiled spring. Sarah felt the leash pull taut in her hand as Max stood up abruptly, his focus laser-locked on something in the distance. "Max?" Sarah followed his gaze, confused. In 7 years as a police officer and 2 years handling K9s, she'd learned to trust when a dog signaled something important. But there was no threat here, just families enjoying a sunny Saturday. Then she heard it, a voice, small, high-pitched, cutting through the ambient noise of the crowd like a bell. "That's Daddy's doggy." The words came from somewhere in the crowd, carried on the voice of a very young child. Sarah's heart began to pound. She scanned the sea of faces, looking for the source. Max began to tremble, not from fear or aggression. Sarah knew those signals well. This was something else entirely, something she'd never seen from him. His tail, which she'd rarely seen move beyond a few polite wags, began to swing back and forth. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed and intensity. "Max!" There, about 30 feet away, pushing through the crowd with the determined waddle of a toddler, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 3 years old, wearing a pink dress covered in butterfly patterns. Her blonde hair was pulled into 2 small pigtails that bounced as she ran. Her face was flushed with heat and excitement, and her tiny arm was extended, pointing directly at Max with absolute certainty. Behind her, a young woman was chasing, calling out desperately, "Emma, no, sweetie, wait." But Emma wasn't waiting. Her little legs pumped as fast as they could carry her, dodging around adults' legs, nearly tripping over a stroller, her eyes never leaving Max. And Max, the dog who hadn't shown genuine emotion in 2 years, who Sarah had begun to think of as permanently damaged, was pulling against his leash with a strength that surprised her. The German Shepherd's whole body was shaking now. His tail wasn't just wagging, it was a blur of motion. A sound emerged from his throat that Sarah had never heard before, a high-pitched whine filled with something that sounded impossibly like desperate hope. "Max, sit," Sarah commanded, more from habit than anything else. For the first time in 2 years, Max ignored her completely. The little girl was getting closer and Max was pulling harder. Around them, the crowd began to notice something unusual was happening. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. A circle began to form, people instinctively making space for whatever was about to unfold. Emma was 10 feet away now, her small face breaking into a smile of pure joy that seemed far too knowing for a child her age. She called out again, her voice ringing with absolute conviction. "Max, Max, it's me." And in that moment, as Sarah watched the broken police dog before her transform into something vibrant and alive, she knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Whatever was about to happen would change everything. Sarah Martinez's training told her to maintain control of her K9 partner at all times. Every instinct screamed at her to tighten her grip on Max's leash, to assert dominance, to prevent the 85-pound German Shepherd from doing something unpredictable in a crowd full of children. But something deeper, something beyond protocol and procedure, made her fingers loosen instead. Max surged forward. Not with aggression, not with the controlled power of a police dog pursuing a suspect. This was something entirely different. Max moved like a drowning man breaking the surface for air, like a prisoner seeing sunlight after years in darkness. His massive paws scrambled against the grass, his whole body straining toward the little girl who was still running, still calling his name with a certainty that defied logic. "Emma, stop!" The young woman chasing the toddler was closer now, close enough that Sarah could see the panic etched across her face. She was in her late 20s, with light brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her t-shirt had baby food stains on the shoulder, and she was pushing a stroller with one hand while reaching for Emma with the other. "Baby, please, you can't just..." But Emma had already reached Max. The collision should have been disastrous. A 3-year-old child weighing maybe 30 pounds, crashing into a trained police dog who outweighed her by more than 50 pounds. Sarah's heart seized, her body tensing to intervene, but Max moved with a gentleness that took her breath away. The moment Emma's small body made contact with his chest, Max lowered himself to the ground, his legs folding beneath him until he was lying down, making himself small, accessible, safe. Emma threw her arms around Max's thick neck and buried her face in his fur. "I missed you," the little girl sobbed, her voice muffled. "I missed you so much, Max. Where did you go? Why didn't you come home?" The crowd that had gathered, and it was substantial now, at least 50 people forming a wide circle, fell absolutely silent. The kind of silence that happens when people collectively sense they're witnessing something sacred, something private, something that shouldn't be interrupted. Max's response shattered whatever composure Sarah had left. The German shepherd, who had been emotionally distant for 2 solid years, who had accepted affection with patient tolerance but never reciprocated, who Sarah had begun to believe was incapable of connection, began to shake violently. His whole body trembled as he pressed his head against Emma's tiny chest. Then came the sound, a keening, desperate whine that seemed to come from the very depths of his soul. It was the sound of 2 years of locked-away grief finally breaking free. He began licking Emma's face frantically, his tail whipping back and forth with such force it kicked up small clouds of dust. His front paws came up, gently, so incredibly gently, to rest on Emma's shoulders, as if he needed to convince himself she was real. "Good boy, Max," Emma whispered, her small hand stroking his scarred ear. "Good boy, I'm here now, I found you." The young woman finally reached them, and Sarah saw that tears were streaming down her face unchecked. She stood frozen for a moment, one hand covering her mouth, her whole body shaking with silent sobs. The stroller beside her held a sleeping infant, oblivious to the drama unfolding. "I'm so sorry," the woman finally managed, her voice breaking on every word. "Officer, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I had no idea he would be here. If I'd known, I never would have brought her. I should have checked, I should have." Sarah held up a hand, her own throat too tight to speak. She shook her head, trying to communicate that no apology was necessary, that she was just as overwhelmed by what was happening. The woman wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing mascara across her cheek. She took a shaky breath, clearly trying to compose herself. That was my husband's dog." The words came out strangled, painful. "Officer Daniel Hayes, he died in the line of duty, 18 months ago." The name hit Sarah like a physical blow. Daniel Hayes. She knew that name. It was in Max's file, buried in the sanitized language of official reports. Previous handler, Officer Daniel Hayes, status, deceased, line of duty death. But there had been nothing else. No mention of a wife, no mention of a daughter, certainly no mention of a baby. The file had made it seem like Daniel Hayes was alone in the world, like Max had been his only family. "Oh my God," Sarah breathed. Her mind raced, trying to reconcile what she'd been told with what was happening before her eyes. The records. They said there was no family. I've had Max for 2 years and no one ever mentioned. "Because they didn't know about Emma," the woman said bitterly. A flash of anger crossed her face, though Sarah sensed it wasn't directed at her. "Daniel's personnel file was outdated. We'd been separated for 6 months before he died, not divorced, just working through things. He was supposed to update his emergency contacts, add Emma, but he kept putting it off." Her voice cracked again. "And then he ran out of time." Sarah's mind reeled, separated. That explained why there was no family notification in Max's file, but it raised so many questions. How does she know him? Sarah asked, gesturing to Emma, who was now sitting cross-legged on the ground with Max's head in her lap, humming softly to the dog. If you were separated, how does a 3-year-old recognize? Daniel insisted on visitation, the woman explained, her eyes never leaving her daughter. Every other weekend plus Wednesday nights, he'd pick Emma up and Max was always with him. Always. They were a package deal. A sad smile crossed her face. Emma loved Max almost as much as she loved her daddy. When Daniel would drop her off Sunday nights, she'd cry just as hard saying goodbye to Max as she did saying goodbye to her father. "What's your name?" Sarah asked gently. Jennifer Hayes." The woman, Jennifer, finally tore her eyes away from Emma and Max to look at Sarah directly. "I kept his last name, for Emma's sake, so she'd have the same name as her father." In the stroller, the baby stirred, making small mewling sounds. Jennifer reached down to rock it gently, her movements automatic, practiced. "This is Danny," she said quietly. "Daniel Jr., he's 4 months old. Daniel never got to meet him." The words hung in the air, heavy with loss. Sarah watched as Emma leaned down to whisper something in Max's ear. The dog's eyes, which had been dull and lifeless for 2 years, were bright, alert, focused entirely on the little girl. His tail continued its relentless wagging, and every few seconds he would lick Emma's cheek, as if reassuring himself that she was truly there. "How long has it been since she's seen him?" Sarah asked. Jennifer's expression crumbled. "The night before Daniel died. That was their last Wednesday visit. Daniel brought Emma home around 8 and she fell asleep in the car. He carried her inside, Max following right behind like always. Daniel tucked her in and Max sat by her bed until she was completely asleep. That was their routine." She paused, swallowing hard. Daniel was killed less than 6 hours later during a late-night traffic stop. Emma woke up the next morning asking when Daddy and Max were coming back. "I had to tell her." Jennifer couldn't finish the sentence. Sarah felt tears burning in her own eyes. She'd been so focused on Max's trauma, on trying to heal a broken dog, that she'd never fully considered the human cost. She'd read Daniel Hayes' name in a file and moved on, treating it as just another piece of Max's history. But Daniel had been a husband, a father, a man with a life and people who loved him. And Max had lost him too. "Emma," Jennifer called softly. "Sweetie, we need to let the nice officer and Max get back to work." "No," Emma's response was immediate and fierce, her small arms wrapped tighter around Max's neck. "Max is my dog. Daddy gave him to me." Jennifer closed her eyes, pain flashing across her face. "Baby, that's not." But Emma was already talking to Max again, her voice taking on the sing-song quality of a child telling an important story. "Daddy said you'd always protect me, remember? He said you were the bestest, bravest dog in the whole world. He said even when he had to go away, you'd keep me safe." Max's whine changed pitch, becoming something that sounded heartbreakingly like agreement. And Sarah Martinez, standing in the middle of Riverside Park on a sweltering summer day, realized that everything she thought she knew about her K-9 partner had been completely, utterly wrong. Max wasn't broken. He'd been waiting. The crowd around them had swelled to over 100 people. What had started as a casual community event had transformed into something else entirely, a silent vigil of witnesses to a reunion that transcended the ordinary. Parents held their children close. Off-duty officers stood with hands clasped behind their backs, many blinking rapidly against unexpected emotion. Even the teenage volunteers manning the cotton candy machine had abandoned their posts to watch. Sarah noticed Police Chief Robert Thompson pushing through the outer ring of spectators, his weathered face creased with concern. At 62, Thompson had seen everything in his 4 decades of law enforcement, but even he stopped short when he saw what was happening in the center of the circle. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "Is that Jennifer Hayes, Sarah confirmed quietly, not taking her eyes off Emma and Max. And Daniel's daughter. Thompson's face went white. His hand moved instinctively to his chest, as if checking for his own heartbeat. "That's impossible," Daniel's file said. "The file was wrong," Jennifer said, her voice stronger now, edged with years of suppressed anger. She turned to face the chief, her eyes blazing. "The file was wrong about a lot of things, apparently." Thompson had the decency to look ashamed. He'd been the one to fold the flag at Daniel's funeral, to present it to Daniel's parents with the standard words of gratitude and condolence. Daniel's mother had mentioned a daughter, but in the chaos and grief of that day, Thompson had assumed she meant a niece, a goddaughter, something more distant. He'd never connected it to Max's future. "Mrs. Hayes, I don't know what to say. If I'd known Daniel had a daughter, if I'd known about your separation, we never would have." Thompson's usual commanding presence had evaporated, leaving behind a man confronting a serious institutional failure. "You would have done exactly what you did," Jennifer interrupted, her voice bitter. "You would have taken Max, assigned him to another handler and moved on, because that's what the department does. Officers are replaceable. K-9 partners get reassigned. Life goes on." She looked down at Emma, who was now lying on the grass beside Max, the dog curled protectively around her small body. "Except for the people left behind. For us, nothing goes on." Sarah felt the accusation even though it wasn't directed at her. She'd been the beneficiary of that system, the handler who received Max without question, without ever considering there might be people who had a claim to him that went beyond official paperwork. A small voice cut through the tension. "Why is everyone sad?" Emma had sat up, her blue eyes moving from face to face. Max immediately adjusted his position, keeping his body between Emma and the crowd, his protective instincts, dormant for 2 years, suddenly very much alive. "We should be happy. I found Max. Max found me. That's good, right?" The simplicity of her logic, the pure child's perspective that saw only reunion without complication, made several people in the crowd wipe their eyes. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart," Thompson said, crouching down to Emma's level despite his creaking knees. "Finding Max is very, very good." He glanced at Sarah, something unreadable passing across his face. "Officer Martinez has been taking excellent care of Max. She's been his friend for a long time." Emma studied Sarah with the intense scrutiny only a 3-year-old could muster. "Do you love Max?" The question was so direct, so innocent, that Sarah felt her breath catch. Did she love Max? She dedicated 2 years to him, spent countless hours trying to reach him, brought him home to her apartment every night, researched and implemented every training technique she could find. But love? She'd never quite broken through to whatever core of himself Max had locked away. "I care about Max very much," Sarah said carefully, choosing her words. "But I think Max's heart belongs to someone else." Emma nodded sagely, as if Sarah had confirmed something she already knew. "Max's heart belongs to Daddy, and Daddy's in heaven, but Daddy sent Max to protect me. That's what Daddy promised." Jennifer made a small, choked sound. She knelt beside her daughter, her hands trembling as she stroked Emma's hair. "Baby, when did Daddy promise that?" "The last time," Emma said matter-of-factly. "When he tucked me in, he said, 'Emma Bear, Daddy has to do important work keeping people safe. But if anything happens, Max will protect you. Max will always, always protect you.' And then he kissed me and Max licked my face and I went asleep." The words fell like stones into still water, rippling out through the assembled crowd. That had been the night before Daniel died, his last conversation with his daughter, and he'd somehow known, or feared, or simply prepared for the possibility that he might not come back. Thompson pulled out his phone, his fingers fumbling with the screen. "I need to pull Daniel's case file, right now." He stepped away, already barking orders into the phone at whoever answered. Sarah watched Max, trying to understand the transformation before her eyes. The dog who had been going through the motions of existence for 2 years was vibrantly, completely present. His ears swiveled constantly, tracking sounds around the perimeter. His eyes moved from Emma to Jennifer to the baby in the stroller and back again, a circuit of vigilance. Every few seconds, he would lean in to touch his nose to Emma's hand or cheek, as if checking she was still real. Officer Martinez, a woman from the crowd, spoke up hesitant. "I'm recording this, is that okay?" Sarah started to say no. This felt too private, too sacred for social media, but Jennifer surprised her by nodding. "Record it," Jennifer said firmly. "The department erased my daughter from her father's life once. They're not doing it again. The world should know that Officer Daniel Hayes had a family, that his daughter loved him, that his partner remembered." The woman held up her phone, and Sarah saw that dozens of others were already recording. This moment was going to spread far beyond Riverside Park. By tonight, it would be national news. By tomorrow, international. Emma, oblivious to the cameras and the implications, had started singing. It was a simple melody, slightly off-key the way children's songs always are, but Max's reaction was immediate and profound. His ears folded back, not in fear but in recognition. His eyes closed and his breathing deepened. A sound rumbled from his chest, not a growl but something closer to a purr, a sound of contentment Sarah had never heard from him. "That's the song Daddy sang," Emma explained, pausing her melody. "He sang it to Max every night before work. He said it kept Max safe." Jennifer's face crumpled. "I didn't know that. Daniel never told me about a song." "It was their secret," Emma said, resuming her singing. "The lyrics were simple. Good boy, brave boy, strong boy, true. I'll come home, I promise you. Guard the night until the day, Max will always find the way." Sarah felt something break open inside her chest. Daniel Hayes had sung to his dog. He'd tucked his daughter in and promised her protection. He'd been trying to repair his marriage, to be a better father, to do all the normal things people do when they think they have time. And then, in one terrible moment during a routine traffic stop, time had run out. Thompson returned, his face grim. "I've got the incident report pulled up. Daniel was shot during a felony traffic stop at 2:47 a.m. The suspect fled the scene. Daniel was," he paused, glancing at Emma, "he was found by his backup unit 11 minutes later. Max was still in the vehicle, exactly where Daniel had commanded him to stay." "He ordered Max to stay?" Sarah asked, something cold settling in her stomach. "Standard protocol for traffic stops," Thompson confirmed. "Handler approaches alone, K9 stays in the vehicle unless called. Max never got the command to engage." His voice dropped lower. "According to the backup officer's statements, Max was trying to break through the vehicle window when they arrived. Clawing, biting at the glass, desperate to get to Daniel. They had to sedate him to get him out safely." The image was devastating. Max, hearing his partner in distress, unable to help, trapped by training and obedience and a command to stay. Watching Daniel die from behind a pane of glass he couldn't break. "He thinks he failed," Sarah whispered, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. "All this time, Max has been carrying the guilt of not saving Daniel." "But he didn't fail," Emma said firmly, looking up from where she'd rested her head against Max's side. "Daddy told him to stay. Good boys stay when they're told to stay. Max was being a good boy." The child's logic was flawless, her faith unshakable. And somehow, miraculously, Max seemed to understand. His tail thumped against the ground once, twice, 3 times. A smile, if dogs could smile, seemed to cross his face. Chief Thompson cleared his throat roughly. "Officer Martinez, I think we need to have a conversation about Max's future." Sarah looked at Emma, curled against the dog who had been waiting 18 months to find her again. She looked at Jennifer, tears still streaming down her face but something like hope beginning to dawn in her eyes. She looked at Max, finally at peace. And Sarah knew that whatever came next, nothing would ever be the same. The afternoon sun had shifted, casting longer shadows across Riverside Park. The community event continued in the background. Children still laughed on the fire truck. Music still played from portable speakers. But in the circle that had formed around Emma, Jennifer, Max, and the officers, time seemed to have stopped entirely. Sarah knelt beside Emma, her police uniform absorbing the heat of the day. She'd been trained for crisis situations, for de-escalation, for maintaining composure under pressure. But nothing in her training had prepared her for a 3-year-old child who was currently explaining to a grieving police dog why everything would be okay now. Max was very lonely, Emma announced to no one in particular, her small hand stroking the scarred ear that Max had sustained during a suspect apprehension 3 years prior. He missed Daddy every single day, just like me. Jennifer inhaled sharply, her hand moving to her mouth. In the stroller beside her, baby Danny began to fuss, and she automatically began rocking it with her foot while her eyes remained locked on her daughter. Emma suddenly pulled back from Max, her hands moving to frame his face the way she might hold a beloved stuffed animal. What happened next would be replayed on news channels across the country, shared millions of times on social media, and remembered by everyone present for the rest of their lives. "Max," Emma said, her voice taking on a serious tone that seemed far too mature for her tiny frame, "why didn't you save Daddy?" The question landed like a bomb. Jennifer gasped. Several people in the crowd made involuntary sounds of distress. Chief Thompson's weathered face contorted with pain, but it was Max's reaction that broke Sarah's heart into pieces. The German shepherd's ears flattened completely against his head. His entire body seemed to collapse inward, making him appear smaller, diminished. The light that had returned to his eyes just minutes ago flickered, threatened to go dark again. A sound emerged from deep in his chest, a keening, agonized whine that spoke of 2 years of suppressed guilt and self-recrimination. "Emma, baby, no." Jennifer reached for her daughter, but Emma gently pushed her mother's hands away. "It's okay, Mama. Max needs to know something." Emma turned back to the dog, her blue eyes, so like her father's, Sarah suddenly realized, filled with a wisdom that shouldn't exist in someone so young. "Daddy told you to stay, didn't he?" Max's whine intensified. His paws came up, covering his snout in a gesture so human-like, so clearly expressing shame that several people in the crowd began openly crying. "He told you to stay in the car, and you did, because you're a good boy, the bestest boy." Emma's voice was steady, certain. "You wanted to help Daddy. You tried so hard to help Daddy, but you couldn't because you were being a good boy and doing what Daddy said." Sarah watched, transfixed, as Emma leaned forward and pressed her forehead against Max's. The dog remained perfectly still, his eyes closed, his whole body trembling. "It's not your fault, Max," Emma whispered, but in the absolute silence that had fallen, everyone could hear her. "Daddy didn't die because you didn't protect him. Daddy died because a bad man hurt him. That's not your fault. That's the bad man's fault." Thompson turned away, his broad shoulders shaking. Sarah saw him pull out a handkerchief and press it to his eyes. Around the circle, hardened police officers who dealt with violence and tragedy daily were openly weeping. But Emma wasn't finished. She pulled back, looking directly into Max's eyes with an intensity that was almost frightening. "Max, Daddy's not coming back, I know that now. Mama explained it to me lots of times. Daddy is in heaven with Jesus and the angels. He's not coming back to our house. He's not coming to pick me up on Wednesdays anymore. He's not going to meet baby Danny." Jennifer made a broken sound, pressing her fist against her mouth to stifle a sob. "But you know what?" Emma continued, her voice brightening slightly. "Daddy sent you to find me. He told you to protect me, and you will, because that's your job now, not being a police dog, being MY dog, being Emma's dog, being Danny's dog, being Mama's dog." The presumption in her words should have been awkward. After all, Max technically belonged to the police department, was assigned to Officer Martinez, had an entire chain of command that determined his future. But somehow, coming from this tiny girl in a butterfly dress, it sounded like the most natural thing in the world. Max's eyes opened. The shame and guilt that had clouded them moments before was still there, but something else was emerging, something that looked like tentative hope. His tail moved slightly, a small wag that picked up speed as Emma smiled at him. "See, you do understand." Emma threw her arms around Max's neck again. "We're going to go home together, and you're going to sleep in my room, and I'm going to tell you stories, and you're going to protect me from bad dreams, just like Daddy wanted." Sarah found her voice, though it came out rough and unsteady. "Emma, sweetie, Max is. I'm his handler, he lives with me. The police department decides where he goes." Emma's head swiveled toward Sarah with startling speed. Her expression wasn't angry or defiant. It was simply confused, as if Sarah had said something that made no sense. "But Max is Daddy's dog," Emma said slowly, as if explaining something obvious to someone very dense. "And Daddy's not here anymore, so now Max is our dog, that's how it works." "That's not. The department has rules, honey," Sarah tried again, but the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. "Do you love Max more than I do?" Emma asked, her head tilting to one side. The question wasn't accusatory, it was genuinely curious. Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. Did she love Max more than this child who had been separated from him for 18 months? This child whose father had promised her Max's protection with his dying breaths? This child who had just given a traumatized police dog more healing in 5 minutes than Sarah had managed in 2 years? "No," Sarah admitted quietly. "No, I don't think I do." "Then Max should come home with me," Emma concluded with the unassailable logic of a 3-year-old. "Because people should be with the people who love them most. That's what Daddy always said." Chief Thompson had composed himself enough to rejoin the conversation. He crouched down, his knees cracking audibly until he was at Emma's eye level. "Emma, I'm Chief Thompson. I was your daddy's boss." "Did you like my daddy?" Emma asked immediately. "I loved your daddy," Thompson said, his voice thick. "He was one of the best officers I ever had the privilege to command. He was brave and kind and dedicated. He was a hero." Emma nodded seriously. "Mama says that too, but she also says heroes don't always come home." Thompson's jaw tightened. "Your mama is right. And I'm sorrier than you can possibly understand that your daddy didn't come home. If I could change it, Emma, if I could trade places with him, I would." "You can't," Emma said simply. "But you can let Max come home with me, can't you?" The question hung in the air. Thompson looked at Sarah, then at Jennifer, then back at Emma. Protocol said that retired police dogs could be adopted out, but usually to their handlers or specifically vetted families. Max was technically still in service, assigned to Sarah. There were procedures, paperwork, committees that made these decisions. But looking at Max, truly looking at him, Thompson saw a dog that had come back to life in the presence of this child. He saw a police dog who had served with distinction for 5 years, who had saved lives, who had lost his partner in the worst possible way. And he saw a little girl who had lost her father but somehow found the strength to absolve a guilty dog of sins he'd never committed. "Emma," Thompson said carefully, "if Max comes to live with you, you'd have to take very good care of him. He's not a young dog anymore. He needs special food and exercise and lots of love. It would be a big responsibility." Emma's face lit up like sunrise. "I can do that. I'm very responsible. I help Mama with baby Danny all the time. I can help with Max too." Thompson looked at Jennifer, Mrs. Hayes. Jennifer Hayes, who had been silent through most of this exchange, finally spoke. Her voice was steady, but tears continued to stream down her face. "Chief Thompson, my husband died believing that Max would protect our daughter. In the last conversation he ever had with Emma, he promised her that. Are you really going to make me tell my daughter that her father's last promise was a lie?" The words hit like a physical blow. Thompson straightened up, his decision made. "Officer Martinez," he said formally, "how do you feel about a change in Max's assignment?" Sarah looked down at Max, who was gazing up at Emma with absolute devotion. She thought about 2 years of trying to reach him, of feeling like a failure as a handler, of knowing something was missing but not understanding what. She thought about the joy on Max's face now, the life that had returned to his eyes, the purpose that had reignited in his bearing. "I think," Sarah said slowly, "that Max has already made his choice." And as if to confirm it, Max's tail began to wag. Chief Thompson pulled out his phone again, his thick fingers swiping through screens with surprising dexterity for a man his age. "I need to see Daniel's full file. Everything we have." He stepped a few feet away, his voice dropping to a low murmur as he made calls, issued orders, demanded answers that should have been provided 2 years ago. Sarah watched Jennifer Hayes carefully. The young widow had composed herself somewhat, wiping away tears with the hem of her shirt, but her eyes remained red and swollen. There was something haunted in her expression, a weight that went beyond simple grief. Sarah recognized it. She'd seen it in the mirror often enough over the past 2 years. It was the look of someone carrying guilt they couldn't put down. "Mrs. Hayes," Sarah began gently, "can I ask you something?" Jennifer's laugh was bitter. "Please call me Jennifer. Mrs. Hayes makes me feel like Daniel's mother." She paused, her hand moving to touch baby Danny's tiny foot. "What do you want to know?" "You said you and Daniel were separated when he died. Can you tell me what happened?" Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma whisper secrets to Max. The dog's ears perked forward as if he could understand every word. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Daniel was consumed by the job," she said. "I don't mean that as criticism, it's just the truth. Being a K-9 officer wasn't what he did, it was who he was. He and Max were inseparable. Sometimes I felt like I'd married both of them." A sad smile crossed her face. "When Emma was born, I thought things would change. I thought he'd request a transfer, maybe take a desk job, something with regular hours and less danger." "But he didn't," Sarah guessed. "No, if anything, he doubled down. He said he was making the world safer for Emma, that every criminal he caught was one less threat to his daughter." Jennifer's voice cracked. "We fought about it constantly. The missed dinners, the canceled plans, the nights I'd lie awake wondering if he was coming home. I gave him an ultimatum, the job or us." Emma looked up from Max, her young face suddenly alert. "Mama, that's not what happened." Jennifer's eyes widened. "Baby, you were too young to remember." "Daddy told me," Emma interrupted, her voice matter of fact. "The night before, he said he was trying to be better, he said he chose us." The words froze Jennifer mid-breath. "He, what?" Emma nodded seriously. "When he tucked me in, he said, 'Emma Bear, Daddy's been making mistakes, but I'm going to fix them. I'm choosing you and Mommy. I'm going to come home every night and be the daddy you deserve.' And then he cried. I saw the tears." Jennifer's hand flew to her mouth, her whole body beginning to shake. Oh God, Daniel." Chief Thompson had returned, his phone still in his hand, his expression grave. "I just spoke with Captain Rodriguez from Internal Affairs. Daniel had submitted a transfer request 3 days before he died. He was asking to move to the training division, regular hours, no field work. He wanted to become a K-9 instructor." The revelation hit Jennifer like a physical blow. She stumbled backward and Sarah caught her arm, steadying her. "He never told me," Jennifer whispered. "Why didn't he tell me?" "According to Rodriguez, Daniel wanted to surprise you," Thompson continued, his voice gentle. "He'd planned to tell you that weekend. He'd even scheduled a family counseling appointment. The paperwork was in his locker. He was trying to put his family back together." Sarah felt tears burning in her own eyes. Daniel Hayes had been trying to change, to be better, to choose his family over his career. And he died before he could make it happen. The tragedy of it was almost unbearable. "There's more," Thompson said, and something in his tone made everyone tense. "I reviewed the dash cam footage from the night Daniel died. I hadn't watched it since the initial investigation, but I needed to see it again." He paused, choosing his words carefully. The suspect Daniel pulled over was Marcus Fleming, wanted for armed robbery and assault. When Daniel approached the vehicle, Fleming opened fire immediately. No warning, no provocation, just executed him. Jennifer made a sound like she'd been punched. Daniel managed to call for backup before he went down, Thompson continued, his voice thick with emotion. His last words on the radio were shots fired, officer down, protect Max. Even dying, he was thinking about his partner. Sarah's heart clenched. She'd read the incident report, but the dry language of official documentation hadn't captured this. Daniel Hayes had used his final breath to protect his dog. Max heard everything, Thompson said quietly. The gunshots, Daniel calling for backup, Daniel falling, and Max couldn't do anything except obey the last command Daniel had given him, stay. The German shepherd's ears had flattened against his head again, his body pressing closer to Emma as if seeking comfort. Emma wrapped her arms around his neck, her small voice fierce. It's okay, Max. You were being a good boy. The backup officers said when they arrived, Max was covered in Daniel's blood from trying to break through the window, Thompson continued, and Sarah could see the toll this was taking on him. They had to sedate him to get him out of the vehicle. He fought them every step of the way, trying to get back to Daniel. Jennifer was crying openly now, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Sarah moved closer, offering a hand that Jennifer grasped desperately. After that night, Max shut down completely, Thompson explained. We tried everything. Different handlers, intensive retraining, veterinary behaviorists. Nothing worked. He'd follow commands, but it was mechanical. The spark was gone. That's when we assigned him to Officer Martinez, hoping a fresh start might help. But it didn't, Sarah said softly, because Max wasn't just grieving Daniel. He was carrying the guilt of not saving him. Exactly, Thompson confirmed. For 2 years, Max has been punishing himself for following orders. Emma suddenly stood up, her small hands on her hips, looking remarkably like a miniature adult. That's silly, she announced with the absolute certainty only a child could muster. Max is a good dog. Good dogs follow orders. If Max had tried to save Daddy, the bad man might have hurt Max too. Then Daddy would be sad in heaven because Max got hurt. And I'd be sad because I wouldn't have Max. So really, Max did exactly the right thing. The logic was childlike, simple, and somehow completely irrefutable. Sarah watched as Max's posture slowly changed, his ears lifting slightly, his tail giving a tentative wag. It was as if Emma's words, spoken with such innocent conviction, had granted him permission to forgive himself. You're a very smart little girl, Thompson said, his gruff voice softened by emotion. Your daddy would be so proud of you. Daddy is proud of me, Emma corrected him firmly. He watches me from heaven, and he's happy that Max found me again. I know it. Jennifer pulled herself together enough to speak, though her voice was shaky. Chief Thompson, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Anything, Thompson promised. Did Daniel die instantly, or did he? She couldn't finish the question, but everyone understood what she was asking. Thompson's face softened. According to the coroner, Daniel lost consciousness within seconds. He didn't suffer, Jennifer. I promise you that. And he died knowing backup was coming, knowing Max was safe, knowing he'd done everything possible to make things right with his family. It was small comfort, but Jennifer nodded, accepting it. She looked down at Emma and Max, the child and the dog who had both been marked by Daniel's death, and made a decision. Max is coming home with us, she said firmly, looking directly at Chief Thompson. I don't care about protocols or procedures or department regulations. My husband's last promise to our daughter was that Max would protect her. I'm not letting bureaucracy make him a liar. Thompson nodded slowly. I'll make it happen. Max has served this department faithfully for 7 years. He's earned the right to retire with the family of his fallen partner. I'll handle the paperwork personally. Sarah felt a strange mix of relief and loss. She'd spent 2 years with Max, but she'd never truly had him. He'd always been waiting for this, for Emma, for the family Daniel had promised to protect. "Can I still visit him?" Sarah asked softly. "I'd like to know he's okay." Jennifer's expression warmed. "Officer Martinez, Sarah, you gave Max 2 years of your life when no one else could reach him. You're always welcome in our home. Always." And as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting golden light across Riverside Park, a broken family began to piece itself back together, one German shepherd at a time. The announcement that Max would be going home with the Hayes family spread through the crowd like wildfire. Within minutes, the entire Community Day event had transformed into something else, a celebration, a vigil, a moment of collective catharsis for a community that had never fully processed the loss of Officer Daniel Hayes. People who had been strangers an hour ago were hugging, crying, sharing stories. Several off-duty officers who had worked with Daniel appeared seemingly from nowhere, drawn by word of mouth and frantic text messages. They stood in a loose semicircle, watching Emma and Max with expressions that ranged from joy to heartbreak. "Danny would have loved this," said Officer Marcus Williams, a burly man in his 40s with kind eyes. He'd been Daniel's partner before Max, back when Daniel was still in patrol. He talked about Emma constantly, showed me about 1,000 pictures a day, and he was absolutely devoted to that dog. His voice caught. "Seeing them together, it's like a piece of Danny came back." Jennifer looked up at Williams, recognition dawning on her face. "Marcus, I remember you. You came to the funeral." "I did," Williams confirmed, kneeling down beside her. "And I'm sorry I didn't do more afterward. I should have checked on you, should have made sure you were okay. We all should have." Jennifer shook her head. "I pushed everyone away. The whole department reminded me of what I'd lost. I couldn't." She trailed off, watching Emma braid her small fingers into Max's fur. "I couldn't look at his brothers in blue without seeing him." Sarah had been standing slightly apart, giving the Hayes family space, but now Chief Thompson called her over. His expression was serious, all business now that the decision had been made. "Martinez, we need to talk logistics," he said quietly. "Max has been your assigned partner for 2 years. There are medical records, training schedules, dietary requirements, behavioral notes. Everything needs to be transferred to Mrs. Hayes. Can you prepare a comprehensive briefing?" "Of course, sir," Sarah replied automatically, then hesitated. "But Chief, there's something you should know. Max has some issues, triggers." Thompson's eyebrows rose. "What kind of triggers?" Sarah glanced at Max, who was completely relaxed with Emma, looking more peaceful than she'd ever seen him. "Loud noises, especially anything that sounds like gunfire. He has panic attacks. Full-blown, hide under the bed, shaking for hours panic attacks. 4th of July is a nightmare, and thunderstorms." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He also has nightmares. He'll wake up whining, sometimes howling. I've had to sleep on the floor next to his bed more times than I can count." Jennifer's face paled slightly, but her jaw set with determination. "What else?" "He doesn't like strangers approaching from behind," Sarah continued. "He's never aggressive, but he'll position himself between me and whoever's approaching, very defensive. And he won't eat unless someone he trusts is in the room. I've had to hand-feed him on bad days." "That's PTSD," said a new voice. Dr. Rachel Chen, a veterinarian who specialized in working with military and police dogs, had joined the group. "I consulted on Max's case about a year ago. Chief Thompson called me down here when he heard what was happening." She looked at Jennifer with professional compassion. "Mrs. Hayes, Max is a wonderful dog, but he's also a traumatized dog. Taking him on isn't going to be easy." "I don't care," Jennifer said immediately. "My daughter has nightmares too. She wakes up crying for her father. She has anxiety when I leave her sight. Maybe they can help each other." Dr. Chen smiled gently. "Actually, that's not a bad instinct. There's significant research showing that trauma survivors, human and canine, can aid each other's healing. But you'll need support. Training, resources, possibly medication for Max during high-stress periods." Whatever it takes, Jennifer said firmly. Emma, who had been listening with the careful attention children give to adult conversations they're not supposed to understand, spoke up. Max isn't broken. He's just sad. Sad isn't the same as broken. Dr. Chen knelt down to Emma's level. You're absolutely right. Max isn't broken, but he needs special care, just like you might need a bandage if you scraped your knee. Can you help take care of Max? I already am, Emma said simply, gesturing to where Max had rolled onto his side, his head in her lap, looking more content than he had in 2 years. See, he's not sad right now. Dr. Chen laughed softly. No, he certainly isn't. She turned back to Jennifer. I'll provide you with everything you need. My services free of charge. It's the least I can do for Officer Hayes' family. Chief Thompson was making notes on his phone, his expression focused. We'll also set up a fund. The Police Benevolent Association has resources for families of fallen officers. We should have done this 2 years ago, but better late than never. Medical care for Max, training support, whatever you need. I don't want charity, Jennifer said quietly but without anger. It's not charity, Thompson countered. It's taking care of our own. Daniel gave his life for this city. The least we can do is make sure his family and his partner are taken care of. His voice softened. Let us help Jennifer, please. We owe you that much. Jennifer looked like she wanted to argue, but baby Danny chose that moment to start crying in earnest. She sighed, lifting the infant from the stroller and beginning to rock him automatically. Fine, but I want to be clear. I'm not some helpless widow who needs to be rescued. I have a job, I have a home, I can provide for my children. No one thinks you're helpless, Sarah said gently, but accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Max had sat up when Danny started crying, his ears alert, his attention shifting to the baby. Emma noticed immediately. Max, that's Danny, he's your brother now. Well, my brother, but also kind of your brother because we're a family. Cautiously, Max approached the stroller. Jennifer tensed slightly, maternal instinct kicking in, but Sarah placed a gentle hand on her arm. Let him investigate. He's good with bobbies. We do demonstrations at daycares all the time. Max sniffed carefully at the crying infant, his tail wagging slowly. Then he did something that made everyone's hearts melt. He very gently licked Danny's tiny fist. The baby's crying stopped abruptly, replaced by a gurgling sound that might have been a laugh. He likes Max, Emma announced proudly. See, Mama, we're already a family. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were different. Not tears of grief or loss, but something softer. Hope, maybe, or healing. Officer Williams pulled out his wallet and extracted a photograph, worn and faded from years of handling. This was taken at the department barbecue 3 years ago. Before, he trailed off, handing the photo to Jennifer. Jennifer gasped. The picture showed Daniel in civilian clothes, a huge smile on his face, with a much younger Emma perched on his shoulders. And beside him, sitting perfectly at attention with what could only be described as a dog smile, was Max. Daniel kept a copy in his locker, Williams said quietly. He looked at it before every shift, his good luck charm, he called it, his reasons for coming home. Emma leaned over to see the picture, her small finger tracing her father's face. That's Daddy, he looks happy. He was happy, Williams confirmed. Happiest I ever saw him. He loved being your dad more than anything in the world. Jennifer clutched the photograph like it was made of gold. Can I keep this? It's yours, Williams said. Like I said, it's just a copy, but I think you need it more than the department does. Chief Thompson checked his watch. It's almost 5 o'clock, the event's winding down. He looked at Jennifer. Do you want to take Max home tonight, or would you prefer to wait until we've got everything properly transferred? Jennifer looked at Emma, who was back to cuddling Max, whispering plans about all the things they'd do together. She looked at Sarah, who was trying to hide the sadness in her eyes but failing. She looked at Max, who seemed more alive than he had in 18 months. "Tonight," Jennifer said decisively, "we've all waited long enough." Sarah nodded, swallowing hard. "I'll get his things from my car. His bed, his food, his toys, his medical records, everything." She paused. "And Jennifer, thank you for giving him what I couldn't, a family." "Thank you for keeping him alive until he could find us," Jennifer replied, her voice thick with emotion. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting everything in shades of gold and amber, the pieces began to fall into place. A broken family, a traumatized dog, a dedicated officer, and a community coming together to heal wounds that had festered for too long. Emma looked up at the adults surrounding her, her young face serious. "Can we go home now? Max is tired. He needs to see his new room." And just like that, with the simple wisdom of a 3-year-old, the decision was finalized. Max was going home. Sarah Martinez's apartment was only 15 minutes from Riverside Park, but the drive felt like crossing into another lifetime. She sat in her patrol car, hands gripping the steering wheel, while Jennifer followed behind in her minivan with Emma, baby Danny, and Max. Through the rearview mirror, Sarah could see Max's head poking between the front seats, his attention fixed on Emma beside him. 2 years of her life, distilled into cardboard boxes and plastic bins. Sarah had always kept her emotions tightly controlled, a necessity in law enforcement, but as she pulled into her apartment complex parking lot, she felt them threatening to spill over. She'd lived alone since her divorce 3 years ago, and Max had been her constant companion. Her alarm clock, her exercise partner, her excuse to leave social gatherings early. He'd filled a loneliness she hadn't wanted to admit existed. "You okay?" Jennifer asked softly, appearing beside Sarah's car window. The young widow's eyes were understanding, knowing. She'd lost far more than Sarah was losing today. "I'm fine," Sarah lied, then reconsidered. "No, actually I'm not fine, but this is right. I know it's right." Jennifer reached through the window and squeezed Sarah's hand. "Grief isn't a competition. You're allowed to be sad." Sarah blinked rapidly, refusing to cry. "Let me show you everything. I made lists." Over the next hour, Sarah methodically went through Max's entire life with the precision of a military operation. She showed Jennifer the specific brand of food Max preferred, demonstrated how to check his ears for infection, explained his medication schedule for the anxiety that plagued him during storms. "This is his bed," Sarah said, dragging out a large orthopedic dog bed from her bedroom. "He won't sleep in it if it's too close to walls. He needs to see all exits, PTSD thing. And this blanket," she held up a worn fleece blanket, "was in the K9 vehicle the night Daniel died. It still has Daniel's scent. Max sleeps with it every night." Jennifer's hand trembled as she took the blanket, bringing it to her nose. After 18 months, she could barely detect anything, but Max's reaction was immediate. He pushed his nose against the fabric, his whole body relaxing, a soft whine emerging from his throat. "Daniel wore that fleece constantly," Jennifer whispered. "It was his favorite. I thought the department had lost it." "Max wouldn't let anyone take it," Sarah explained. "The first night I brought him home, he grabbed it and wouldn't let go. I had to build our entire routine around this blanket." Emma had been exploring Sarah's apartment with the fearless curiosity of a 3-year-old, but now she returned, dragging a stuffed elephant nearly as large as herself. "Can Max have this? He looks lonely without toys." Sarah smiled. "Max already has toys, sweetie. Let me show you." She pulled out a bin filled with rubber bones, rope toys, and puzzle feeders. "But you know what? Max would probably love that elephant. Do you want to give it to him?" Emma's face lit up. She presented the elephant to Max with the solemnity of a knight bestowing a sword. "This is Mr. Trumpet. He's very brave. He'll keep you safe from bad dreams." Max sniffed the elephant, then very gently took it in his mouth, his tail wagging. It was such a simple moment, but Sarah saw Jennifer cover her mouth, tears streaming down her face. This was what healing looked like, a little girl giving a traumatized dog a stuffed elephant, creating new memories to replace the painful ones. Sarah's phone buzzed. Chief Thompson, checking in. The department was already processing Max's retirement paperwork, expedited through channels that normally took months. Thompson had also arranged for a local pet supply store to donate 6 months of food and supplies. The community, once they heard the story, was rallying. "There's one more thing," Sarah said, her voice catching. She went to her bedroom and returned with a wooden shadow box. Inside was Daniel Hayes' K9 handler badge, his collar insignia, and a photo of him and Max during their certification ceremony. "This was supposed to be retired with Max. I think it should go home with you." Jennifer couldn't speak. She just nodded, clutching the shadow box to her chest like she was holding a piece of her husband. By 7 o'clock, Jennifer's minivan was packed with everything Max owned. The sun had set and the parking lot lights cast long shadows. It was time. Sarah knelt down in front of Max one last time. The German Shepherd looked at her with those intelligent brown eyes, and for just a moment Sarah saw recognition. Gratitude, maybe, or goodbye. "You're a good boy, Max," she whispered, her voice breaking despite her best efforts. "The best boy. You take care of them, okay? You take care of Emma and Danny and Jennifer. That's your job now." Max leaned forward and licked her cheek once, gently. Then he turned and walked to Jennifer's van, where Emma was already waiting in her car seat, her small hand extended toward him. "Bye, Officer Sarah," Emma called out. "You can visit Max whenever you want. He'll miss you." "I'll miss him too," Sarah managed to say. As the minivan pulled away, Max's face appeared in the rear window, watching Sarah until they turned the corner and disappeared from sight. Sarah stood alone in the parking lot, her apartment suddenly feeling cavernous and empty. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Jennifer. "Thank you for loving him when we couldn't. We'll take it from here." Sarah typed back, "Call me if you need anything, day or night, I mean it." The response came immediately. "Come for dinner Sunday. Emma's already planning what to cook for you. Fair warning, she's 3. It'll probably be chicken nuggets." Sarah laughed through her tears. "I love chicken nuggets." 3 days later, Sarah stood on Jennifer Hayes' front porch, a bottle of wine in one hand and a bag of dog treats in the other. The house was a modest ranch style in a quiet neighborhood, with a fenced backyard and a tricycle abandoned on the front lawn. Before she could knock, the door flew open. "Officer Sarah," Emma launched herself at Sarah's legs, hugging with the full-body enthusiasm only small children could muster. "Max has been waiting for you all day." And there he was, standing in the hallway behind Emma, his tail wagging so hard his entire back end moved. He looked different somehow. The haunted quality that had shadowed his eyes for 2 years had diminished. He looked content. Jennifer appeared, baby Danny on her hip, flower in her hair. "Come in, come in." Fair warning, Emma insisted on helping make cookies. The kitchen is a disaster zone. Sarah stepped inside and Max immediately came to her, pressing against her legs in greeting before returning to Emma's side. His loyalty had shifted, but not his affection. Sarah could live with that. The house smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. A baby swing occupied the corner of the living room, and on the mantel, in a place of honor, was the shadow box Sarah had given them, alongside framed photos of Daniel in uniform. "How's he doing?" Sarah asked as Emma dragged Max toward the kitchen, chattering about the cookies she'd made all by herself, with extensive help from Mommy. "Better than expected," Jennifer admitted. "He had a nightmare the first night, woke up howling, but Emma heard him and climbed out of her bed, crawled right into his bed with him and sang him that song Daniel used to sing. He calmed down immediately." She smiled, shaking her head in wonder. "They sleep together now. Her bed, his bed, doesn't matter. Wherever one is, the other follows." And the PTSD triggers. "We had a thunderstorm yesterday. He started packing, panting, the whole anxiety spiral you warned me about. Emma made him a fort out of blankets in her closet, crawled in with him, and told him stories until the storm passed. Jennifer's eyes were bright. "Sarah, she's healing him, and I think he's healing her." From the kitchen came Emma's voice. "Officer Sarah, come see. Max learned a new trick." Sarah followed the sound and found Emma standing proudly beside Max, who sat at perfect attention. "Max, show Officer Sarah how you give gentle kisses." Max leaned forward and very carefully licked baby Danny's foot, so gently it was barely a touch. Danny giggled, and Max's tail wagged triumphantly. "We've been practicing," Emma explained seriously, "because Max has to be very gentle with Danny. Bobbies are fragile." Sarah felt her heart swell. This was what she'd wanted for Max but couldn't provide: a purpose, a family, a reason to heal. He wasn't just existing anymore, he was living. As the evening progressed, chicken nuggets were indeed served, alongside the catastrophically decorated cookies. Sarah watched Max settle into his new life. He stationed himself between Emma and the front door, always vigilant but no longer fearful. When Danny cried, Max alerted Jennifer immediately. When Emma played, Max played too, gentle and careful despite his size. At 8 o'clock, Emma announced it was bedtime. Without prompting, Max followed her down the hallway. Sarah and Jennifer watched from the doorway as Emma brushed her teeth with Max sitting patiently beside her, then climbed into bed. Max jumped up without hesitation, circling twice before settling beside the little girl. Emma wrapped her arm around Max's neck and whispered, "Daddy, Max and I are okay. You don't have to worry about us anymore. We have each other." And in that moment, Sarah understood that she hadn't lost a partner. She'd helped complete a promise that Daniel Hayes had made with his last breath, a promise that Max would protect his family. Some bonds, she realized, transcended death itself. Part 8, Coming Home. Expanded 1,000 words. 6 months had passed since that sweltering day at Riverside Park, and winter had blanketed Cedar Rapids in pristine white snow. The transformation that had occurred in the Hayes household during that time could only be described as miraculous. Jennifer stood at her kitchen window, watching Emma and Max play in the backyard. Her daughter, now 3.5, was bundled in a purple snowsuit, building what she insisted was a snow castle for Max. The German Shepherd bounded through the drifts with an energy Sarah Martinez had never witnessed, his dark coat dusted with white, his tongue lolling in a genuine dog smile. "He's a completely different dog," Sarah said from her seat at the kitchen table, baby Danny gurgling happily in her arms. She'd become a regular fixture at Sunday dinners, her relationship with the Hayes family evolving from professional obligation to genuine friendship. "Emma's different too," Jennifer replied, turning from the window with her own smile. "The nightmare stopped about 3 months ago. Her therapist says having Max has given her a sense of security she lost when Daniel died." She paused, her expression softening. "They saved each other." The numbers supported what everyone could see. Max's anxiety medication had been reduced by half. His panic attacks during thunderstorms had become manageable. The haunted, guilty look that had shadowed his eyes for 2 years had vanished, replaced by alert contentment. He'd gained back the 15 pounds he'd lost after Daniel's death. His coat had regained its luster, and most importantly, he'd found joy again. Emma had blossomed as well. Her teachers reported she was more confident, more engaged. She talked about her father now without collapsing into tears, telling stories about when Daddy and Max were police partners with pride instead of pain. She'd started a Max's journal where she drew pictures of their daily adventures, creating a record of healing one crayon drawing at a time. The doorbell rang, interrupting Jennifer's thoughts. Chief Thompson stood on the porch, stamping snow from his boots, a large envelope in his gloved hands. "Chief," Jennifer greeted him warmly. "Come in, coffee's fresh." Thompson had become another regular visitor, checking in weekly on Max's transition. but today his expression carried particular significance. "I have something for you," he said, settling into the living room as Emma and Max tumbled through the back door in a flurry of snow and laughter. "The city council met last night. They've approved a memorial for Daniel." Jennifer's breath caught. A memorial. Thompson opened the envelope, spreading architectural drawings across the coffee table. A K-9 memorial park, actually, in honor of all fallen officers and their K-9 partners. Daniel's name will be the first on the dedication wall. His weathered finger traced the design. There'll be a bronze statue, an officer and his dog. The sculptor wants to use photos of Daniel and Max as the model. Emma had appeared beside the table, Max pressed against her legs, both of them dripping melted snow onto the carpet. "Is that Daddy?" she asked, pointing at a sketch. "It will be," Thompson confirmed gently. "A statue so everyone can remember how brave your daddy was." "And Max," Emma added firmly. "Max was brave too." "And Max," Thompson agreed. "The plaque will read, 'In memory of Officer Daniel Hayes and K-9 Max and all those who serve with courage and loyalty.' We're breaking ground in the spring." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, but they were different from the bitter, angry tears she'd cried for 18 months. These were tears of gratitude, of recognition, of a community that hadn't forgotten. "There's more," Thompson continued, his voice thickening with emotion. "The story of Max and Emma, it's touched people across the country. We've received donations from all 50 states. People wanting to honor Daniel's memory, wanting to help families of fallen officers, wanting to support K-9 programs." He pulled out another document. "We've established the Daniel Hayes Memorial Fund. It provides support for families of fallen K-9 officers and helps retired police dogs find homes with their handlers' families." Sarah leaned forward, shifting Danny in her arms. "How much has been raised?" "As of this morning, just over $200,000. Thompson smiled at Jennifer's shocked expression. "Your husband's story and Max's story and Emma's story, it reminded people why we do this job, why it matters, why the sacrifice means something." Emma tugged on Thompson's sleeve. "Can we visit the statue when it's done?" "Sweetheart, you'll be at the dedication ceremony," Thompson assured her. "You and Max both. You'll pull the cloth off the statue together." The little girl's eyes went wide. "Max, did you hear? We get to unveil Daddy's statue." Max's tail thumped against the floor, his attention fixed on Emma with the devotion that had become his defining characteristic. That evening, after Sarah had left and Thompson had gone, after Emma had been bathed and the snow gear had been hung to dry, Jennifer sat in Daniel's old reading chair. The one she'd been unable to sit in for 18 months, the one that had been a shrine to absence. But tonight, with baby Danny asleep upstairs and Emma curled up on the couch with Max, she'd finally claimed it back. Emma was reading to Max from her favorite book, stumbling over the bigger words but persistent. Max lay with his head on her lap, his eyes half closed, the picture of peace. Every few minutes, Emma would pause to kiss his head or whisper, "I love you, Max." "Mama," Emma said suddenly, looking up from her book, "I had a dream about Daddy last night." Jennifer tensed, ready to comfort if the dream had been frightening. "What happened in the dream, baby?" "Daddy was in a beautiful garden with lots of sunshine. He was wearing his police uniform, but he wasn't sad. He was smiling." Emma's voice took on the dreamy quality children have when recounting something precious. "He said, 'Thank you for taking care of Max, Emma Bear. You're doing such a good job. I'm so proud of you.'" Jennifer's hand flew to her mouth. "He did." Emma nodded seriously. "And then he said, 'Tell Mommy I'm sorry I couldn't stay, but I left you the best protector in the whole world.' Then he petted Max and they were both happy." She paused, her small face thoughtful. "Mama, do you think Daddy really talks to me in dreams, or is it just my imagination?" It was the kind of question that had no easy answer, the kind that required both honesty and hope. Jennifer crossed to the couch and gathered her daughter into her arms. Max shifting to accommodate them both. "I think," Jennifer said carefully, "that love doesn't end just because someone dies. I think Daddy's love for you is so strong that it finds ways to reach you. Whether that's through dreams or memories or Max." She stroked the dog's soft ear. "It's all real. It all matters." "Then Daddy knows Max is happy now," Emma concluded with satisfaction. "Daddy knows we're all together." And maybe he did. Maybe somehow Daniel Hayes could see what his final promise had created. A little girl who'd learned to grieve without being consumed by grief. A traumatized dog who'd found purpose again. A widow who discovered that life could still hold joy even after devastating loss. 3 months later, on the first warm day of spring, hundreds gathered for the dedication of the K9 Memorial Park. Media cameras captured every moment as 4-year-old Emma Hayes, wearing a dress covered in butterflies, stood beside a cloth-draped statue. Max sat at attention beside her, his posture perfect, his eyes alert. Chief Thompson gave a speech about service and sacrifice. The mayor talked about community and healing. But when Emma stepped forward, the crowd fell absolutely silent. "My daddy was a hero," Emma said into the microphone someone had lowered to her height, her small voice steady and clear. "He helped people, he kept us safe, and Max helped him." She looked at the dog beside her. "When Daddy had to go to heaven, he sent Max to take care of me, because that's what heroes do. They make sure the people they love are protected, even when they can't be there themselves." She pulled the cloth, and the statue was revealed, Officer Daniel Hayes in full uniform, one hand raised in salute, the other resting on the head of a German shepherd sitting proud and alert beside him. The sculptor had captured something essential in both faces: duty, loyalty, and an unbreakable bond. Emma walked to the statue and placed a single sunflower, Daniel's favorite, at its base. Max followed, and in a moment that would be replayed on news channels across the nation, the dog sat before the bronze image of his fallen partner and raised one paw in salute. No one had trained him to do it. No one had commanded it. It was simply Max's way of saying goodbye, of honoring the partner he'd loved, the man he'd served, the handler he'd never forgotten. As applause and tears swept through the crowd, Emma wrapped her arms around Max's neck and whispered, "We did it, Max. We made sure everyone remembers Daddy. Now we can go home." And they did, Emma and Max, Jennifer and baby Danny, Sarah walking beside them. A family forged not by blood alone, but by love, loss, and the unbreakable bonds that connect us all. In the end, Max had completed his mission. He'd protected Daniel's family. He'd kept Daniel's promise. He'd found his way home. And in doing so, he taught everyone who witnessed his journey that sometimes the most profound healing comes from the most unexpected places. Like a 3-year-old girl who saw a police dog and recognized not just a pet, but family. Like a traumatized dog who found purpose again in protecting the daughter of his fallen partner. Like a community that came together to honor a promise made with a dying breath. Daniel Hayes had died believing Max would protect his daughter. And Max had done exactly that, not just from physical danger, but from the kind of grief that destroys, the kind of loss that leaves scars. In protecting Emma, Max had saved himself. In loving Max, Emma had found her way through grief. And together they'd proven that love, true, unconditional, transcendent love, never really dies. It just finds new ways to come home.